Awesome. So we're live. So we have Jennifer Anderson here on the call, calling in from California, from the Bay Area. Jennifer is awesome. We actually met. She listened to a few episodes a while back and then put an offer on one of the businesses that we had talked about here on the podcast. She found it, did her own basic due diligence, and made an offer on it, and then reached out to me on Facebook. And so we've connected. She has a ton of background in the buying and selling space, and she bought a business in the past and actually is in the process of selling her current business, which is pretty awesome. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, give us a little bit of background about yourself. I know you've bought a business. You're in the process of selling a business. You're always looking for businesses. Give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I think I got into this whole space of buying and selling businesses mid-career. My background is very much more of a traditional path. I worked in financial services my entire career, everything from trading floors in New York. I got my MBA, and then I came out here to Silicon Valley, where I live now, to get into the startup world. I've been a product manager at a bunch of different startups, including Lending Club, there from pretty early through their IPO, which was a great experience. Now I work at a fintech startup doing business development and partnerships, and have very much gotten into the online buying space about 4 years ago, because I was thinking about my long-term career, what I plan to do. I actually find myself to be very entrepreneurial, and thought I was going to come to Silicon Valley and raise venture capital funds and start one of these, skyrocketing startups. But I think after coming here, working on a couple of these places, seeing what it's like, I decided to shift myself a little bit once I started learning about I could start a smaller business, or I could buy an existing established business, and put myself in that leadership role and that CEO role without having to work 80-hour weeks and have all these fancy investors and that kind of, own most of my business that I'm still working for. And I could have the freedom, the decision-making power. And on top of that, it's a great investment with a great ROI. That to me, I have more control over than just putting my money into the stock market and hoping the market goes up.
You summed up my literal entire thought. You're preaching to the choir here. We should just turn over. You should be the host of this, because you nailed on so many different things where you've had a very traditional career path, moved out to the Bay Area. Everybody has. You read the Forbes articles and the Business Insiders, and it's all about the billionaires and raising money in VC world. And you kind of got into that world a little bit and realized, hey, you know what? I don't really want to work those 80-hour weeks. I don't want to live off ramen noodles either. And there's actually a better path, and you can create a really cool lifestyle with acquisitions, right? And it's an amazing ROI. You have control over it. You just nailed everything I believe in there, Jennifer. So about 4 years ago, walk us through kind of your first acquisition. I guess, did you stumble upon maybe I should buy a site, or what was that? How did you get to that first, oh, this is an interesting world, I think I should buy something, and then walk us through that first transaction that you had?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I think I totally stumbled into it. I think that most of my friends and peers out here in Silicon Valley have no idea about this stuff and think I'm crazy when I talk about it. Which I think is so funny that, I say, oh, there's new millionaires happening every day on Amazon, selling on Amazon. And they're like, really? Yeah. It's like, I might as well be on a different planet. It's so funny. So, I think the way I learned about it and got in is I just started listening to podcasts. I'm obsessed with podcasts, including yours.
I paid you to do that. It's okay. We can admit it.
Yeah. And I can do the whole laundry list of the ones I started listening to, but one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So I started listening to very entrepreneurial podcasts about starting my own business. And I've actually tried to start a couple of smaller e-commerce businesses that were probably in bad picks, just bad niches that I had picked, but learned a lot from that, learned about growth marketing, all the kind of skills you need in the online world. And then, all of a sudden started listening to other podcasts where people started talking about this concept of, oh, I bought a website, or I bought a SaaS business. It was smaller, financed it through SBA, or raise money, or just bought it with my own, savings, and just started learning about where to go, how to look, what this world looks like. And to me, it just like, it jumped me into exactly what I wanted to do. And so just doubled down on this space, learned who the players were, learned who the people were, learned who the brokers were. And just at one point, really said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit. And that's kind of when I started to really look and find my first business.
That's awesome. I love that. A lot of it starts with an idea, and if you're like me, you've had a lot of startups that you've tried, or e-commerce ventures that didn't necessarily work out, and so then you kind of open up to this world of, how do we find something that's already existing? It already has product market fit and profit and customers and all these things that you don't have when you start a business from scratch. So walk us through how you found that first one. So it sounds like you got connected with the brokers, the brokerage sites. Did you buy through a broker, and in what? I don't know if you can talk too much about that business, but is it a content site, a SaaS play, or is it e-commerce business? What type of business did you buy?
Yeah. So the first business I bought, I actually signed up with all the brokers. I started getting deal flow. I was looking every day. I was very disciplined. And then the first business I bought, I actually found on Flippa. Which I don't know, like, how do you explain Flippa? Is like the eBay of buying and selling businesses. That's how I describe it to people, right? It's kind of
or the Craigslist almost.
Yeah. So which is crazy. Which, looking back now, it's kind of crazy because so many people warn you about fraud on there, and like the all the ways that it could go wrong. But that's where I found the first business, and it's in the crafting niche. And the reason I did it is because I had just been at one of these entrepreneurship conferences before that, and I went to a session where a guy, like a 30-year-old, white guy from America, was talking about how he was running a knitting company, a knitting business. And he was talking about all the growth hacking he did on it, and how he grew this business from, X to Y. And just his whole pitch was around like, look, I'm this 30-year-old dude who's never knitted in my life. But I picked a good company in a good market with a good target customer base that I know how to reach. And this is how I grew this business. And so I when I saw this business come through on Flippa, and it was in the crafting niche, and it was a target market that I knew how to reach, and I thought, this is great. And it was at a good price point where it was small-ish. It was very small-ish. I mean, this was not a 6-figure deal, and I thought it was a good way to get in and see if I could grow it.
I love that. So kind of a couple things to unpack there, which is really fascinating. One is when you're surrounding yourself with people at conferences and just kind of expanding your learning, you're able to then see, hey, other opportunities. I don't have to be super passionate or know a ton about an industry to be successful in it. Now, were you into crafting before you acquired this business at all?
No. My hobbies are running online businesses and my child.
That's awesome. That's actually what I tell people too. I'm like, well, I'm not really that passionate about this idea, but I am passionate about business and the process, and offering an awesome customer experience and that sort of thing. And I think that's a kind of a mistake. A lot of people, when they look for a business, they say, well, I don't know anything about crafting or knitting or sewing or something. And you don't necessarily need to know that stuff, but you need to know how to operate the business and how to hire the right content people and kind of act as the manager over this business. How did you go about
reach your customers? I would say my target market in this space is like my mother. Like, that's my persona, and I know how to reach her. I know where to target her. I know that she's on Facebook day and night, and so I knew Facebook ads would work for this business. So that's kind of.
And was this business doing Facebook ads before you took over?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I love that you knew who the customer was, even though it wasn't yourself. You said, hey, this is actually my mom. I know her really well. I know how to reach her, which I think is really, really critical. Walk us through just maybe the first couple steps of that transition. Did you change everything all at once? Was it kind of an information overload when you took it over? Were there some fear the day of, right before you bought it? Walk us through some of those emotions and that first couple steps after you took over.
Yeah, there was total information overload. Even doing the diligence process was super intimidating. I think that's where it helps to reach out to your network, because, like, as I mentioned, I have an MBA. I wouldn't say I look at financial statements day and night, so I wasn't really even sure how to go through the financial statements, the questions I should be asking, what kind of terms I should be looking for, things like that. So I actually like reached out to a friend who does M&A for, a Fortune 500 company, and he helped me, and then he sent it to another friend of ours that was a dual MBA law degree, and he looked at the contract and told me some things I should come back on. So it was I say reach out to your network and get help if you need to on the diligence process. That definitely made it less scary for me. But yeah, up until even when after the deal was done and I wired the money and I was in training, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail. This is crazy. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But like, most things are figure outable. If there's a will, there's a way. So I figured it out eventually.
Oh, I love that. There's so many things to unpack there that you did really well, especially of developing your network before you needed it. You can't, if you need a lawyer today, you needed to meet one a month or 2 years ago. Right. And so that network was really, really critical. I also love the fact that, this is, as you said, was maybe a smaller transaction. You're still running and operating this business. It sounds like you've been able to see some growth from it, but you're still nervous, right? You're still doing something new and you're still getting yourself into an area where this is all brand new. What made you keep going through as you were about to sign and wire that money? Was there any hesitation that you were not going to go through with it? Or you're like, you know what, like I've already done my due diligence. I know things are good. I'm ready to go forward with it.
No, I think I took the leap. I definitely tried to educate myself. I tried to be as prepared as I could. I had already taught myself a little bit about Facebook advertising. I knew the social media channels. I mean, it's not rocket science to figure those out. Pinterest was the one that had the biggest learning curve for me, but I was already on Instagram, Facebook. So just knowing all of that stuff. I immediately hired a Pinterest expert because I thought that was going to be too hard to understand, but I realized I could have figured that out myself. But I just knew, I think I had done enough homework and I knew enough places to go to get answers that I figured I'd be okay. But definitely it was very scary to wire that money off. I also started small. Like I could have gone much bigger, but I started very small, and I do go back and forth on that. Do you start small or do you start with a bigger business? Hindsight is 20/20, but I actually think I would have gone bigger, just because you have a bit more breathing room. A friend had told me, it's a lot easier to go from 100 to 0 than it is to go from 1,000,000 to 0, right? So you have a bit more breathing room, barring major life crises or pandemics, right? But you just have more breathing room to make mistakes, and you have more profit and revenue that's coming in every month that you can use to hire out help, right?
Yeah.
So I think going smaller is actually, it's even more like school of hard knocks, because you got to learn how to do that stuff yourself, which has been great because I have a great learning curve, no regrets. But that's my lessons.
So I would totally agree with you. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I should go smaller. Sometimes I should go bigger on different types of deals. Starting small is okay. In the end, it just depends what you feel comfortable with. And so in your case, you felt comfortable starting small. That's a great way to look at it, like 100 to 0 compared to 1,000,000 to 0. I've always looked at it like it's the same amount of hours and the same amount of work, whether it's a $100,000 company or $1,000,000 company. And so a 10% increase on $1,000,000 company is $100,000, whereas a 10% increase on 100,000. But I like the way of looking at it from like the downside too, right? Like you just have a lot more wiggle room, and there's a little bit more play in terms of that learning. You probably also have a little bit more resources that if you needed to hire things out, or if you need to get different consultants or agencies on board, you can do that. So without giving us too many details, because I know you're in the middle of, when this airs, your business should be locked in, done, sold, and everything. So walk us through the process of selling your business right now. You've been on the buying side. Did that help with selling? Any of the ups and downs or kind of hiccups that you're having? And this is a different business than the one you bought. So.
No. So I bought 2 businesses. I bought this crafting one, and then I bought an affiliate site.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I bought a mommy blog from one of the brokers about a year ago. So now I have 2. and the one I'm selling is the crafting one. So yeah, so I've had experience with pretty much all the different types of brokers or different ways of buying a business right now. I actually almost did a private deal even before this business that kind of fell through, but you know, you live and you learn on those things. So yeah, this is the one I'm selling. We're in LOI, about to sign the purchase agreement, knock on wood, any day now. And then start the transition period. So yeah, in terms of learnings, I mean, I think I've learned a lot about how to pick brokers, what to look for in your broker, things that you should do to keep your business ready for a sale. Keep everything separate. Keep a separate bank account for that business if you can, which I always did from the beginning. I had QuickBooks to keep the financials separated. One thing I didn't do is I have the same Amazon affiliate link on this site as I do on all the others. It's smallish, so it doesn't matter too much, but I didn't even include that in the revenue, for example, because it was just too hard to unwind between that and my other site. But that's a learning there. And yeah, and trust your gut. I think when you're, especially around broker selection, and one thing that happened with this business is I had done my own P&L. The brokers will do their P&L. They'll ask you for all your bank statements, your credit card statements, and they'll build their own P&L based on that, and based on whether they follow how they calculate it, how they go about calculating it. And one thing I learned there is really try and get a call with them, try and get the Excel that they used, really dig deep on how they came up with their numbers and stress test it, because they have some guy that's building your P&L, but he's not on the call with the potential buyers when you start to have those customer calls. And they were asking me questions that I didn't necessarily, I have my P&L, didn't match his, and it was hard for me to map it back. And like, once I pressure tested a little bit, I found mistakes in what they did. So that's really important.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And that's good to know.
Your credibility with the buyer. So yeah.
Absolutely. Because if you get a couple of those questions wrong, they say, well, I don't know if I can trust anything else in this. And so big takeaways, you know, have your finances buttoned up, and of course, separate your projects, right? Separate your businesses, because that way they actually know what they can get. And if they ever need financing, they can get financing, because you can't get financing on if something's all commingled, because the bank is like, I don't know which is which. Yeah. And then that's really, really critical that you stress test basically everything. There's a summary, and then there's a P&L that brokers typically will send out, and you want to make sure everything's buttoned up, and you read through that summary and the P&L as if you had created it, so you can talk intelligently about that. Now, you're also looking at a lot of, and congratulations on this. You've bought a business, you've built it up, and you're in the process of selling it. This will air after it sells. Walk us through what you're looking for in other types of businesses, and what kind of stands out. I know this is kind of unique to your skill sets and your risk tolerance and what you're looking for, but what do you typically look for a business when you're looking at it for sale?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth all the time, but right now I've kind of put a stake in the ground. I love this area as a way to invest in the future. When you think about the ways that people invest today, there's a stock market, there's real estate, and I think this is an emerging asset class that many more people are going to be doing in the coming years. So I want to do that, but right now my time is short, and I have to be careful about the types of businesses that I invest in and buy. So where I've decided to focus is affiliate sites going forward. I feel like I have a handle on that now with the second business that I've bought. I've learned a lot around SEO and the things you need around that. And so I think sites that are earning money through advertising or affiliate income are kind of the what I think is a good fit for me right now, in terms of the ROI that you get and the amount of work you have to put in, and being able to just outsource and know where to go to outsource a lot of the work around that.
I love that. I would completely agree, especially if you're limited on time. Those are great ways to where you can put in an hour and have it just, that hour can be very, very fruitful down the road and continue to pay dividends, or going to you sound like you've got the right resources for SEO help and content help and that sort of thing. And just in terms of kind of the last question for you then is, top 3 resources. It sounds like you've been in the space for 4 or 5 years. What maybe your top 2, 3 resources that you use to look for companies, find companies, acquire companies, anything of that sort? Grow companies, doesn't matter.
Learn about company. My top 2, 3 resources. Let me think about that for a second.
I can jump in. And I'll say a couple of mine to give you a moment to think. So,
I edit that out too while I'm thinking.
yeah. So a couple of my top resources are going to be the brokerage sites. So Quiet Light Brokerage, Empire Flippers, FEInternational.com. Those are kind of the most common ones. BizBuySell is common. BizBuySell typically will have a ton of listings, some garbage, some really good ones, but a lot of local businesses. Now, of course, you and I are more in the online space, so those are kind of the resources for online. Another thing I like is if you're in Denver or San Francisco, wherever you are, there's going to be local brokers selling local businesses. And all it does is you just got to do some Googling to figure out who those are and then start to network them. It sounds like way before you bought a business, and I've done the same thing too, is to get on the radar of the brokers. They need to get to know you. They need to get to know your skill sets, and of course, what you're looking for. And I have felt knowing the brokers has significantly given me a better kind of pathway to not necessarily seeing deals early. Maybe there's some of that, but not as much as people think, but more of just trust with the brokers. And so when I submit a question into the broker, they know this is, Ryan, he closes deals and he's got these questions and he's done a transaction with us before, so he gets it. So those are kind of the top resources or maybe tips that I would say in terms of looking for a company to buy.
Yeah, 100%. I would say get on all the email lists of the brokers. There's 4 or 5 main ones. So like you said, yeah, get on their list. Empire Flippers comes out with new businesses every Monday. You can see them at a high level. They email it out. You can take a look. I would say even just go on Flippa so that you can learn and refine your eye and how you search, because there's a lot of garbage out there and there's a lot of good stuff out there as well. So it'll help you just get sharper at that. And then I was pulling up my trusty podcast app. The place where I really learned a lot about this stuff, buying and selling, besides your podcast, of course, is the Web Equity Show with Justin Cook and Ace Chapman. So Justin Cook is one of the founders of Empire Flippers. And I would go back and listen to all the seasons of that. It's just amazing. They walk through everything, soup to nuts. And then I would say a shout out to another podcast, which is the Website Investing Podcast with Richard Patey, who actually did my website audit for my mommy blog that I bought. So I think he's doing a great job, and he has a newer podcast as well, and an email that he sends out weekly, analyzing deals. So those are great resources.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jennifer. We'll link to those in the show notes. And you can't stress enough that you're kind of getting your info from several different places, but there are also resources that you have available. Like you are going to acquire a company, you got a third party to do an assessment on it from the Website Investing Podcast. And that's really critical because there's a lot of services out there that can help you round out your skill sets and round out your due diligence. And a lot of times it's a phone call away and it's a report away, and you can actually use these people on your team if you don't have someone that can do that deep dive for you. Well, this is super awesome. Jennifer, you dropped so many nuggets in here and really, really appreciate your expertise in this. How can people find you if they have questions? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to give my email address, probably the easiest one to say verbally, anderjen@umich.edu. So UMich, like University of Michigan. That feeds right into my main email account. So I love talking about this stuff. I love helping people get started in this stuff, especially women that are looking for ways to have a leadership role and don't want to work an 80-hour work week at a startup. I think this is an amazing path for people to consider. So happy to chat with folks about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being on the show.
Okay. Thanks.